It doesn't matter how popular a gaming franchise is. Once adapted to the silver screen, no one can escape the infamous video game curse. I'll explain what the curse is and why we most likely won't have a blockbuster video game adaptation anytime soon. Hi, I'm Pat, and today I'm gonna take a look at the Uncharted movie. First, let's find out if the movie is any good and why it's so difficult in general for video game franchises to find success on the silver screen. Growing up, I loved playing the Uncharted games. I mean, what's not to love? Great action, great characters, and great gameplay. Yet, I never felt the desire to see a movie about the games. Like, at all. Because the games themselves were already such cinematic experiences. Much more so than the actual movie itself, in my humble opinion. Going off the box office numbers, I'd say the movie was a decent success. Neither a bona fide box office smash hit, nor a total bust. The chances for a sequel are high as the movie itself teases a post-credit scene confirming that Nate's brother is still alive. Despite my love for the franchise, I couldn't quite warm up to the movie. The characters lacked chemistry. Even Tom Holland's usually great acting performance was somewhat underwhelming.
Really? Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg seemed like he didn't even want to be there.
Why is he here?
I don't really know.
The characters I cared about the most, believe it or not, were actually Sam and Nate, and Sam's not even in the movie for the most part. We're supposed to care about Sully, but it's very hard to do so because we know nothing about the guy. Sully isn't a character like he's in the games. In the movie, he basically just exists to move the plot along.
So this is what you do? You stumble into bars trying to pick up an accomplice?
Key that unlocks the chamber.
Well, you just gave me the book like an hour ago.
Give me a cross.
I'm not giving you my cross. Why would I do that?
Because I'm probably gonna need it up there. Your brother believed that there was a final piece. I thought maybe he said something to you or sent you something. I know where she took the map. Moncada.
Sully is a good example of how simply spending time with a character does not make an audience like them. In order to bond with the character, you need more. The bad guys, except for Tati Gabrielle, who just stood out among them like a sore thumb because of their drastically different visuals, were forgettable gun-toting goons. And while the cannon fodder is a big part of the game canon, a villain with more depth, a real antagonist would have greatly benefited the movie. I liked Antonio Banderas' performance, but the character he played was just a Spanish villain, with a cool Mercedes rather than an actual character. All in all, the movie was okay. The story uses an easy to follow 3-act structure. If you don't know what that is, I've explained it in another video, link in the description box below. The movie's beginning is okay. Okay setting, okay character introductions for Nate and Sam. Sully doesn't really get one.
Victor Sullivan. You can call me Sully.
Thank you.
The middle is okay, Chloe joins them just because.
Get out of here.
Bye.
Maybe it was just me, but the parkour scene felt oddly out of place. Anyway, as the movie nears its end and the climax, it feels as if it was in a rush to wrap things up and ends up venturing a little too far into the realm of nonsense and impossibility for my personal tastes. For a video game adaptation, it's a passable flick. For me, it places somewhere between Prince of Persia and the Tomb Raider franchise, including the newest reboot. Enjoyable, but ultimately forgettable. In the end, even the fan-favorite Uncharted has fallen victim to the infamous curse. Over the years, many movie studios have adapted video games to the silver screen and are able to find moderate success. They often place themselves somewhere in the middle because with an already existing fanbase you already have viewers lined up as opposed to completely original movies. The best performing video game movie adaptation to date has been Warcraft: The Beginning from 2016, and there's a good reason for that. I'll explain in a bit why. The notably most successful video game franchise to date is Resident Evil, spanning 7 movies in total, including the newest reboot. The reason why video game adaptations fail is fairly simple. The adaptations always lack the largest component that makes a game good, the gameplay. While there are some movies that reenact the gameplay, first and foremost Doom comes to mind, that won't solve the underlying problem, the type of engagement. Movies are a passive experience. Video games are an active experience. Your interaction creates your entertainment. Video games aren't simply a different medium to tell a story. They can be, but when done so often appeal to a very minor niche group. Also, their appeal often comes from being able to influence the outcome of the story.
From one roof hangs Trish, the love of your life. From the other, 6 doctors. Which is more important, Cole? The life of one or the lives of many?
Often, stories in video games simply exist as a means to deepen and further the gameplay mechanics. Meaning, video game stories are often subservient to the gameplay. We don't read books because reading itself gives us joy. We read them because of the stories and knowledge they contain. We don't like movies because we like moving pictures, but the stories the pictures breathe life into. With video games, the opposite is true. Good stories enhance good gameplay, but having a good story is not detrimental to a game's success. Examples of that are Dark Souls, Super Mario, and World of Warcraft, just to name a few. While those games have stories and lore, you can enjoy the games perfectly fine without knowing any of it. There are two important things to address here. First, good stories are also not detrimental to movies to succeed. Looking at you, Fast and Furious. But although they make a lot of money, they got to that point through trial and error. They figured out which characters people liked and what it was that appealed to their core audience. Resident Evil did the same thing. That's how they ended up with 6 movies before rebooting. The second thing to note is, in games where the story is the main focus, are often well liked by a very niche player base. Gone Home is a good example of this. It was lauded by critics for its story and mocked by the average player as the ultimate walking simulator, because that's the gameplay in its entirety, walking. Uncharted is a great example of how making a movie out of a game is often a step back rather than forward. The movie's airplane scene perfectly encapsulates everything that is wrong with video game adaptations. To me, Uncharted has always been an adventure simulator. You get to vicariously experience fantastical adventures and rediscover ancient treasure, as it is known from Indiana Jones, National Treasure, and of course the one and only So what's wrong with the scene? Well, nothing in particular. The issue is what it lacks. All these ridiculous sequences we encounter in games work because failure or success hinges on the player's ability. The airplay scene is devoid of any engagement, excitement, suspense, or frustration. The very action sequences in the games are meant to generate. All you can do is watch a lesser version of something you have already experienced, provided you have played the game. This scene simply made me want to play the game rather than watch the movie. Copy-pasting bits and pieces of video game sequences to make a less interactive movie out of it is unappealing and underwhelming, largely due to the protagonist's plot armor. Because movies don't have a game over mechanic like games do, the threats are meaningless. So how can they fix it? There are two ways one can go about fixing the issue. The first is to adapt games that have one particular overlapping area that both mediums are known for. That area is atmosphere and immersion, or in other words, visuals. If you take an immersive and atmospheric game like BioShock with its unique setting, Rapture, and write a proper story with good characters, you'd have the ingredients for a good, potentially great movie. The story would have to change from the ground up though. Why? Because, as I mentioned earlier, copying and pasting game sequences does not make for an engaging movie. Those sequences are geared toward enhancing the gameplay rather than telling an engaging story. You would also have to add new characters to keep the suspense and the illusion of a threat alive. The other way of fixing this problem is to show things people haven't seen yet, or expand on the lore. And this is where Warcraft: The Beginning comes in. The movie explains the story behind the invasion of Azeroth. Given Warcraft's expansive lore, expanding on something that had almost no story besides the game from 1994 was a good choice. It has a broader appeal because it starts from the beginning and anyone who's interested can enjoy it. Sonic the Hedgehog is another recent example of a video game adaptation done well. It takes inspiration from the games, but doesn't have him running around for 2 hours in loops collecting rings, but gives the movie a proper story instead. A New Beginning is something that Uncharted movie got right. It had the potential to appeal to a broad audience, but when it came to writing an actual story, they got lazy. They strung together game sequences from the various games, and that's where they lost me, and I imagine plenty of other fans as well. I don't want to waste my time watching subpar and abridged versions of things I've already experienced on a more engaging level. Final thoughts. The movie is fine. If there's a sequel, I'm gonna watch it. But I personally would have changed things up. I would have had Sully and Nate meet, Nate steal from Sully and go on a solo adventure to find the treasure and his brother. He'd meet and join another group of friendly treasure hunters that Chloe could have been a part of. But slowly he'd start to realize that they're ruthless and villainous grave robbers. When things start to take a turn for the worse, he gets saved by Sully, who had been tracking him. They form a temporary alliance and continue searching for the treasure as a pair, giving them an opportunity to properly bond. This dynamic would have created more interesting conflicts than what we got in the movies. In the movie, Nate bonded more with Chloe.
When did you decide to become Indiana Jones?
One day I found a bronze statue covered in gems. I'll never forget the feeling, you know? Ran and showed it to my father. He sold it, kept all the money. We never saw him again.
but had to end up with Sully because that's how it is in the game.
Why am I not surprised?
Their character bonding was forced and unnatural. I know there is much more that could be said, but I'm gonna end it here for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please share your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, try another one, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again.